Hello, it is Dream, and welcome back for episode 6 of the Octopod podcast. This is part 2 of the pull priority tier list that we started in episode 5. So if you have not already listened to that episode, I recommend starting there, then coming here. And then unfortunately, there will be an episode 7 that continues as part 3 of the pull tier list. We took this topic very, very seriously, and so the recording for this portion of podcast, the pull priority tier list in a whole, was done over 8 hours across 2 different recordings. So it is taking a lot of time and editing and pure willpower to get through all of that and cut it down into condensed, listenable, hour and a half, hour-long podcast. So thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate you. With all that said, let's hop right into the episode, right where we left off. All right. Our boy Hikari.
Right, Prim, what do you think?
I think Hikari is like god tier for new accounts because like you pull him once and then he can carry you for every single physical damage type. But if your account is like relatively veteran, you've been around for a while, or you're already in JP, you already pulled a bunch of good units. A lot of people make the argument that because he cover every single damage weakness after starting from turn 7, that he's very versatile. He is. However, the main issue with him is not really, well, it's two things. One thing is that in order to support his damage for like an uber DPS carry, like if you want to make him your strongest DPS, you probably have to like soul on him, or you'd actually want to soul on him. If you don't soul on him, you're not going to get enough damage to really justify his 8 hit, which is his 4x spear times 2. So all the support characters you're going to be bringing are going to revolve around that. It's not going to be easy for you to necessarily have those support characters also match up to the fight. And that's in the sense that they're going to be good at breaking, because you need to bring support characters that are good at supporting generic stuff or spear stuff, right? So like that'd be like characters like Agnia. You might bring someone like Richard. You might bring Particio, right? Signa, etc. And the other thing is that like Hikari forces you to have a really weak first break in any fight that has turn pressure, because you're not always going to have the option to just like sit there and dirt around until turn 7 to break in a fight that has turn pressure. So like both those things, both the fact that it's more restrictive in terms of the team comp that you need to build around him to make him effective, and then the limitations of that team comp in an actual fight, right? You can't just like you're not just building a team comp on paper. The team comp has to line up with the fight itself, the fight mechanics and the weaknesses, and also the fact that in a fight with turn pressure, he's not going to be good. He's just not going to be good because you're going to have a shitty ass first break, and then sure, like from your second break onward, you can be good, but that comes at the cost of like the fact that you're also very likely to have weak shield shaving, right? Because we just mentioned about the other point. I don't know.
And then also, on hit weakness doesn't trigger follow-ups, right?
No.
Yeah. So then he can't even like enable that for his off hits.
Like as
so,
in like the pierce stuff?
Yeah, for the pierce. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't trigger. It won't trigger casty stuff. It won't trigger Hujheb stuff. It doesn't. Yeah.
Because that would give him a really good use case, but it doesn't even enable that.
Like on paper, he's very versatile and quote unquote easy to use. I think those are the two most commonly heard arguments. But in reality, when you try to build a team around him, it always just like has so many downsides, in my opinion. That makes him like really not very good for veteran players, I would say.
What are your thoughts on him, Grape?
Pretty much the same, to be honest. It's because his base skills are balanced around being able to double cast permanently, which is what he does essentially after turn 7. So that means at a baseline it's adjusted to be slightly lower. For example, most of his skills only hit 2 to 3 times unless you max boost them, and then it hits 4 times. Obviously, if you double cast them, it's 8 times, which would be pretty good. However, that's only after turn 7.
Yeah, not only that, he, his best multi-target skill is random target. It's like a random target spear. His AoEs have very low hit numbers because honestly, even with the 7-turn restriction, if his AoEs were strong, like high multi-hit moves, and of course since he can pierce all weaknesses, he'd actually have a pretty useful niche in some fights. But they clearly designed around that. They're like, oh wow, that would actually be pretty good, huh? Let's not do that. His best AoE is like behind his ult, which
doesn't get double casted. So
yeah, it doesn't even get double casted, and it's pretty restrictive to use. It's only 5 hits.
I think what he would truly excel in is if you have a fight that constantly swaps between a bunch of his weaknesses.
Yeah, I agree.
Then he'd be like your human rights character, as in, if you don't have him, you're gonna have such a painful time clearing that content. They sort of did it with Nilgadi, which was the latest arena fight. But it's first of all not random, so you can just plan on a first break and then go for the second weakness set.
Yep.
Anyways, point being, that's the only situation I can think of where he would truly excel for a vet account.
And as far as we know, we don't really have that kind of fight yet.
It's not a thing yet.
So with what we currently have, where would you guys put him?
Well, he comes out of banner. So here's the thing: he comes out of banner with Casty, who's a must pull, and also his A4 is one of the best in the game, and you can work towards his A4. And
when
Casty,
breaking an enemy, give defense down and all weapon physical res down for 3 turns.
Yeah, it's literally one of the best A4s in the game by far. Like it's
also 50k cap up for some reason.
Yeah, true, and 140 attack to put every stat point into attack.
Yeah, it's like it's easily a top 5 A4, if not like top 3. In that sense, also Casty doesn't need a lot of dupes because her A4 is really nice, but you don't really need it because if you get his A4, you also get near A4, then you can cap X. I like the cough there. Yes. Casty, I mean, here's the thing. Like, if you're a person who would chase Casty A4, then you shouldn't, unless you're Giga Whale. Does that make sense? Like, if you're already someone who spends enough that you would be in the tier to be chasing her A4, then you wouldn't. You just don't need it. At least for now, unless they increase the debuff, passive debuff caps up for damage types as well. Yeah, so I think in terms of like pull priority, since she's tier 1, and then he's also really good for newer accounts, I think you would just pull him because also it allows you to chase his A4 later. I think he's very worth pulling for. It's just that using him as a unit, he's not that great. I would say. Yeah, I think like we're following our previous logic. It sort of makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. All right,
our boy Hujheb.
Hujheb.
Ooh.
All right, I am a huge fan of Hujheb. Just right off the bat. Maybe I'm biased, but I would put him here. Like, okay, I'm gonna give my argument real quick. So
first of all, what does he do? What's his overview?
First of all, he's basically like Casty on crack for bow. Like he's even stronger for bow than Casty is for axe, I would say. Oh, he is. He literally is. So the follow-up attack, he also gives a follow-up attack that Casty does. It's not as strong. Technically, it's 100 potency instead of 200. But that's really not the point, right? Well, even 100 potency is enough because like most multi-hits, like your strongest multi-hits, like per hit potency is like 100. It's not just that. It's just that like all his buffs are insane in a bow comp to the point where bow is basically the strongest DPS type right now in JP due to a combination of both breaking and like sheer buff potential and follow-up attacks and stuff and like sheer number of multi-hits as well. People can say, I can just skip him because he's bow. Like, what if I just don't build bow? Because the argument we already gave about like every fight has multiple weaknesses, blah blah blah. But here's the other point: it's that like he already just makes bow because he's not just like a Richard type. Even Cassie, her DPS in an Axe comp pales in comparison to Hujheb, who's just like a top DPS and that level of support for his comp. Like you're getting like both in the same character essentially.
Now, I would say yes, agree is strong. You probably want Ochette at least,
Yeah, I agree.
and then because like Ochette gives you the nice
Yeah.
passive bow rest down, and
Yep.
then if you have
For free.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a part of her passive,
So like
which is great. You want to break anyways.
I think Hujheb has elevated Ochette into tier 1 because okay, we may as well just talk about both these uses
As a
in tandem.
package,
When
yeah.
when Ochette first came out, people were like, okay, so she's Bo. Like, what else is Bo? Like, what else has Bo got, right?
Hey, Xanta.
Yeah, exactly. But now you think about her whole package. It's like, okay, so she's Bo, but then Bo is good, but then she has 12 hit now. She also gives you free passive Bo res down, and she gives you a free pet, and both those pets are pretty good. So
Yeah,
it's like shit. And there's also no other way to get the other pet, by the way, besides having her. She's the only way. Uh,
yep,
so it's like, oh shit, she's great.
yeah. Yeah, I will say one thing because I don't have Hujheb,
Mhm.
and the main reason is that first of all I didn't have Ochette.
Mhm.
Then the second of all is that he's on a Sacred Blaze banner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
he
bane of
is.
everyone's existence.
I'm probably, if you are a spender, you can probably expect him to be selectable with the paid selector banner.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I think he's gonna be a pretty good candidate for that if you're spending.
Hmm.
He makes bow. You can't really run bow without him.
Yeah. But then if you do have him, you literally only need a chat. Like you don't need Kilns, right? Like even just having these two characters, and then you just have like your standard meta support characters, your bow is like strong. It's
Yeah,
practically your strongest
it's gonna
DPS.
be good enough.
Yeah, especially since like the bow res down is free to play friendly. Like you
Mm.
don't even need any a even with Lolo's A4, you have 25% down. That's very
Yeah, it's close enough to be honest.
yeah, that's very free to play friendly. If you just have these two characters and you have meta support, like that's like your strongest DPS type. I already mentioned how much he supports Bo. Let's like put that in concrete terms. Why I say he supports Bo more than Cassie supports Axe even. Like you just look at his alt. It's a damage move, like a single target bow that grants 15% bow damage up, 50k damage cap up, and guaranteed crit.
The condition is only you have 3 hunters in your team. He's one.
Yeah.
You're running a bow team, so
Yeah.
it's not real condition. Just
Yeah, it's not a real
basically.
condition, yeah. And then, if you have spare turns, he also has cap up on his 100% potency up and his TP skill. And then the way his kit works is that when your wisdom arrows go down to 0, they go back up to 6. Actually, not that difficult to have wisdom arrows.
Yeah, he has a self buff move that's 100% potency up, which
Yep.
reduces it to 0. But reducing it to 0 just means going up, making
Yeah.
it go up to 6, and then
And
you could just
yep.
do his 9 hit twice in a row in your boost in your
And
break turn.
and that's a significant advantage for bow comps because that allows you to solo on Ochette. That's sort of what makes this bow comp so cracked out is that like they're already so cracked out even if you like don't spend time using that move because they're already so strong. But like if you wanted to do like a 5 turn clear, you have plenty of time to use all of his buff skills, and then you end up having like two characters with 100% potency up that both have like a shit ton of hits at high potency with follow up.
I think you can also mention just briefly the A4.
Oh, right. His A4 is any hunter that equips his A4 will have all of their hits pierce dark.
All physical hits, but basically, yeah.
Yeah, all physical hits pierce dark. Yes.
It's pretty disgusting, I think.
Yeah, it's very
I,
disgusting.
I don't like the direction this is going, to be honest.
It's disgusting,
Like-
but it's also hilarious.
Yes, like it's funny, but you know, I think it kills diversity a bit.
Yeah. It also makes it somehow makes Uni like the highest DPS in the game in theory.
For dark, though,
It has to
because
be.
like
Yes. Yeah.
if it's not, then
Yeah, but it's like kind of insane. Like the actual potency, like the number of hits plus potency is like hilarious. What was it?
Yeah, but anyways, I don't
Yeah.
think most people actually just gonna chase Hujheb A4.
Sacred Blaze A4.
Yeah, but I think
However,
it's
you can shard it.
you can shard it. Yeah, so I think it is a really fun A4, and also just like really fun to. It's really fun to use, and it's actually strong if you know how to use it.
Yeah, even considering Sacred Blaze, I think you can put him in tier 1, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever hold the like, so he simultaneously holds the category of like top 2 DPS for his comp. He makes his comp, and he's extremely hard to power creep. And the concept we want to instill in people that we haven't really harped on enough is that having really strong shield breaking in a comp is really valuable regardless. It's not just valuable for people who speed clear, because the more shields you can remove, the more leeway you can have to do any type of actions. That includes
Yeah.
buffing actions to make your party stronger and hit harder over break. It includes support actions if you need mitigation mid-turn or before the enemy does something really strong, right?
Yeah, we're seeing, I think, more, enemies with a BP gauge.
Yep.
And you really don't want that BP gauge to be full interacting.
Yep.
So we're not just talking about 120s and that. It's just like, it does seem like they are moving towards, creating actual visible turn pressure.
Yeah, and they also like a lot of the newer enemies, and as you've seen a lot of EX refights, just have a lot of shields. And so like
Yeah.
it helps even for more than a one break, because in coming out of break, they might increase your shields, you might have more mechanics. You just want to break them fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Grape, do you think as a package deal they deserve tier 1?
Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah, because like
Ochette in particular,
yeah,
before Hujheb, you can't really. It's pretty hard to justify Bolcom, and then suddenly, it's actually pretty good. And then with Ochette, you can. Well, if you don't have Ochette, you have to choose between Akala and Mahina, both of which are pretty good pets.
Yep.
But with Ochette, you can have both.
Oh yeah, that's another advantage of hunters, is that like all of those pets that have like a unique damage class modifier, that damage class is always hunter, because I guess like pets have an affinity with hunters, right? So that includes Hagen, that includes Akala. I think there's like a couple of other ones too that have like exclusive hunter benefits.
So I think we can put them at tier 1 and move on.
Yeah, they're just the strongest. I don't know. There's not much to say.
All right, and that is where the part 1 of our recording ends and part 2 begins. So we're going to cut straight into that part 2 now. There is a mechanic called pet stacking. Can you guys explain that?
The idea behind pet stacking is you use a character like Mabel or Lucetta, or they are the only two characters that give you this effect, where one of their passes gives their row partner buffs received extended +1. The reason why is because there's no way for you to extend the number of turns a pet buff gives you, right? There's no conventional way to do that because your accessories, etc., your other skills and passives don't affect that. So therefore, with Lucetta and Mabel, that's the only way for you to get your main DPS to get a pet buff to be active for more than one turn to 2, because all of their buffs and debuffs from pets, as you've seen, are one turn only, right? And so when you use a pet like Nyagist, which is the gray and white cat, that would give 2 turns of buff. And when you use the black and white cat, that also gives 2 turns of buff, right? So therefore, over 2 turns stacking, you would get 4 turns total, which is 3 turns starting from the second pet that you boosted. And that allows you to have it over both break turns, both buffs added together over both break turns, if they're in the same category. And if they're not in the same category, it also means that you would only have both buffs for one break turn, but you would have both buffs, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, and this whole pet being one turn thing remains the fact in JP at the moment. It's another category of multipliers that you have access to now over to both of the break turns, which is why it's highly desirable, and you will see it basically every time on Prim's videos if it's a fizz-based comp.
Yeah, I will say though, the meta for it is pretty interesting because every single pet has an initial cooldown meter, right? And so depending on the turn count, you sort of have to manage which pet is going to give you the best return if your turn is kind of short, right? So we talked about if you stack two pets of the same category, you can get up to 4 turns, which is 3 turns by the second pet. So if your clear was long enough, you would be able to do 2 attack buff pets, right? Fizz attack buff pets into a damage up pet, which is the chomper pet that JP gets later on, and that's in and of itself a 30% multiplier, and that'd be on your first break turn, right? In order to have all of them active. If your clear is not long enough, if it's like, let's say it's like 5 turns, right? I think both the chomper pet and Yagist become active on turn 4, right? Is that correct?
Yes, it is 4.
Right.
Yeah, 4. Because 3 turns to get ready, so 4.
Yeah, so it's the same thing as Yagist, which is why in a 5-turn clear, the only way, like, there's no way you're going to get everything. So what you would end up having to do is you would do, like, let's say the pet buff, the self pet buff on turn 3, use the chomper pet on turn 4 because it's the most impactful, right? And
Yeah,
then as your self pet buff wears out on turn 5, the chomper pet is still active because again we have that buff extension from Lucetta or Mabel row partner, and then you tack on the Nyagist on turn 5. So you only have one of those two active at the same time, but it doesn't matter.
So you just let it expire, but you don't care because you get the greater one anyways.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is that you structure around using the biggest multiplier one on the first turn of break, especially since that one, the chomper pet, is its own category and it's 30%. So like it's pretty easy to understand. Whenever the rule of thumb is just always use chomper first turn of break, and everything else is structured around that.
Also, just to clarify, these are passives that Lucetta and Mabel get for 5-star, 6-star?
No,
we have it already.
Oh.
It's existed since the dawn of time, since we've had them.
Yeah.
Oh shit!
But no one ever used it because no use case until recently.
Isla.
Don't think we should dive into pets.
Yeah, I just wanted an overview, just so we could throw it in there so that people understand it in general, and then a use case. So that's good. So what's her use case? Her overall? Why would you bring her? How would you use her in general?
Yeah. So I mean, the clear unique selling point of Isla is probably the 50% E attack up for the passive slot, just for the whole front row, just by having Isla in the team. There's also the EX skill, which gives the role partner and himself. I'm not gonna worry about cat's pronouns, anyways. Gives the role partner and I think herself 30% elemental attack, 30% elemental damage up, which is pretty. I mean, it's pretty hard to find, and it's also gives guaranteed ele crit on the target if the target is a scholar, which she herself is a scholar, and then depending on who you pair her with, they'll enjoy that bonus effect as well. The out also gives elemental attack up to 20% and elemental damage up to 20%. I should note that it's pretty hard to get out elemental damage up. The other source would be
Neha. So those two are unique in that their ult gives both ult magic up, alt elemental attack up, and ult damage up. Neha's at U10 gives 15% each, whereas Isla's gives 20% each. So it's multiplicative. So you can think of that's like a 1.44, right, for Isla, which is
for Isla's EX. If she casts it on herself and she's a scholar, she'll get the critical attack. But if say she's a staff person with her ally, So basically, the role
behind
partner has to be a scholar to take advantage of it. You can't just like.
to take advantage of the magic
part.
Of the
part.
yeah.
Okay.
If they're not a scholar, they don't get can land crits with magic or guaranteed critical, right? They don't get the guaranteed critical
Neither
either.
of those
Yeah.
crits effects will apply. She's mainly for like supporting one hyper carry.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she's the super backpack.
Yeah.
Yep. And has some decent breaking abilities. She has an interesting countdown skill where you get a free BPQ at the end of the countdown.
I think that could be pretty good, especially if you're going to do like an elemental near comp, right? You boost the skill so that you can get it within a reasonable number of turns,
Yeah,
and
you
then
satisfy your BP.
yeah, you just have this 3 BP drop in on you, like on the second turn of break, for example, among those 3 turns, and then with a BP regen, you have everything covered.
And we'll explain the free turn thing later when we go to
Yeah.
Neha. So
what tier are
I'll
we thinking
yeah,
of?
tier. Honestly, after I've pulled Isla, I've not used her that much personally.
How much have you used Ellie comps, like overall?
Yeah, exactly. That's the reason. It's partly because my roster is more Fizz leaning, but it's also partly because the Elicom characters now, the hyper carries are not always scholars, and usually that's like, for example, Agnia. That's your wind hyper carry at the moment, but
Mhm.
you can't really fully benefit from Isla.
Well, I mean, also the other thing is that she doesn't have like the buff received +1 effect as like Mabel and Lucetta do,
Yeah,
right? So
so
if you use her as a backpack, you can't pet stack on your hyper carry, which is not as much of an issue because pets suck way more for Ellie.
yeah, but like you have Chomper,
Yeah, so you have Chomper and then it doesn't work.
and then
Like it
there's
only works for
me,
one turn, yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is that is very much a strat focused on one hyper carry,
Yeah.
and then you have Isla, whose purpose is to buff one hyper carry mostly, but then you lose access to pet stacking. So
Okay, so does any
putting
of the
her in
people that she
maybe-
actually wants to be paired with, are they strong enough to justify pulling her, basically, to help them?
I don't
Yeah.
think so.
I mean, I think the question mark is how much is Isla adding to an Osvald hyper carry comp versus if you don't have Isla at all? Like,
Yeah,
how big of a
so
difference is there?
for the damage up, I think you can actually get it via Neha's prayer.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
two of the elements, anyways, and then Neha comes with the benefit of you not having to strictly slot her behind your hypercarry.
Yeah, I think Neha's missing lightning up, but I mean, I guess for a lightning comp, theoretically, you could have someone else.
Yeah, I mean, if the only edge Isla has over Neha is gonna be like the lightning damage, I don't think
Yeah.
we can really give a recommendation on pulling just based on that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of well clears where you end up using both Isla and Neha to like giga buff everyone, and then especially since Neha also gives you cap up, but I don't think like all of this discussion is justifying that she's anywhere, close to tier 1. She's definitely between tier 2 and maybe
I would put her maybe
him.
or him. Yeah, I don't care. Not
Wow.
to get political.
No, it's too
about
late. No,
cats.
you're canceled. It's too late.
Oh shit. Oh well.
You're not
Not like
sexualizing the cats enough, okay?
I think you need another gacha for that.
So I think we're good.
All right, so do you guys want to just jump straight into Neha since we kind of already compared her?
I mean, yeah, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, good idea.
I mean, I can hardly. I mean, Neha's good. As in, well, she's yet another prayer unit, but
I think Neha as a character, her kit is very complete, and the fact that she gives you cap up passively is also very nice. Like she just gives you 20k cap up. She's one of those characters that just gives it to you for free. And then she also has her EX skill gives all allies, so you don't have to do roll management with this 50k cap up.
Now it's
So
not exactly free, but like it's pretty free with some management. The 30k cap up is conditional on her SP being under 50%.
yeah, and that's pretty powerful. So that's 80k damage cap up in one character. And take special note that because Neha is doing this in an Ellie comp, this is especially valuable. Cap up on Ellie is more valuable than on Fizz comps even because of the fact that, well, first of all, like Ellie comps, like they don't really have like too many, they don't have too many hits, right? Like most of the DPS units, they have less hits compared to the physical DPS units, and therefore you just want more cap. So
And her main use is that she's a chant character, and she has two chants. One is fire ice up, and then you can land critical hits with magic, and the other one is light dark up with can hit critical hits with magic again, which we technically already have from Nefty in EN, but you also have to ramp up with Nefty to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, the difference is that, I mean, not it's not a difference, but within her kit, I don't think she guarantees crit anywhere. She just grants the ability to land crits, right? Including her buffs, her channeling, as well as her ult. They're all like enabling crit. So you'd have to have a separate buff character or a character innate way to guarantee crit.
Chant gives 30% crit up actively.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does. But you know,
not
most
really that high when you consider Ellie stats.
Yeah, most Ellie units have really low crit rate. I think a lot of the time after you enable crit, what some people do is they'll use like a character like ODO, you can grant guaranteed crit, or later on you'll have Casti, which also guarantees crit, and then you'll be good to go.
But realistically, ODO and Neha will probably come out closer together.
Yeah, exactly. So once Neha is out, ODO will be out, or vice versa. They'll be very close together, and you'll be using them as a combination in magic comps for a very long time if you're using magic comps, and all the way until Casti at least, right?
So being a general pull unit, do you think?
Yeah, that was the point I was coming to.
Yeah.
Despite all the praises being sung.
Yeah, I would say that like I think it's worth pulling her if you love Ellie comps, if you just love the Ellie characters. But you don't even have to pull her on banner. I think she is sparkable on the Twin Worlds banner, right?
First of all, yes.
Yeah.
Second of all, she's part of the third enemy selector in JP, so I'm not sure what that translates to for EN. I suppose that would depend on
for EN. It'd be like literally a whole year later. So I mean,
I don't know.
There's a chance she's on a New Year selector, but yeah.
Yeah. So like for us, if she doesn't come out before what is it, July 26th or whatever it is, then we're probably not going to have a selector, like a free selector that is, for like a whole year. But at the end of the day, you can spark her on Twin Worlds banner, and you can spook her randomly when you're pulling. So she's probably like also a maybe, even though I would say she's more generally useful than Isla, right?
Yeah.
But in comparison to all the other stuff, like not worth going out of your way for a standard banner. Exactly. Especially one that's probably going to end up being paid if we know global well enough.
Yeah, our banner structure is not good. If we were Taiwan, maybe she'd go to tier 2, but we're not Taiwan, so.
Yeah, we're only number 2. Taiwan number 1.
True.
Do you guys want to hop into Osvald, since we also kind of talked about him?
Yeah, sure. Prim, do you know Osvald's kids?
Yeah. Cool. We talked so many times about sort of the new generation of hyper carries, and one of the signature elements of this new generation, these 2024 carries, the fact that they're more self-sufficient, they're more party slot efficient. What Osvald brings is, in a sense, he can give himself potency up, so he doesn't need a Solon, right? He grants the self potency up through his ult for 3 turns. And not only that, he also offers this follow-up mechanic that also becomes very prominent in JP, right? Well, we get this mechanic also in axe comps and in bow comps. He grants both of these things in one character while being a main carry. I would say the downside to him is that as a main carry, he's maybe a little bit weaker compared to Hujheb, and he's not nearly as general use as Casti, because as we mentioned, Casti's EX skill is completely busted and can be used everywhere. But all this being said, if you care about Ellie at all, he is probably just the best Ellie unit in the game, more universally speaking, because he's granting all the extra damage for your fire comps, ice comps, and lightning comps. And he's also particularly strong as a DPS carry versus fights that have at least two of these three weaknesses, because his TP skill becomes much more potent that way.
Yeah, one thing to note about the follow-up that Osvald offers is that, first of all, it comes with more restrictions than Casti's follow-up. You know, Casti just lets you follow up by existing, and it's AoEX.
Mm-hmm.
Osvald only triggers if he is in the front row.
Yep.
And it's the follow-up that is triggered is random target. So that's like, you know, you don't really want to random target one hit in an AoE fight. That's that's pretty shit.
It's something. It's not nearly as good as AoE, but it's something, because it's at least it's still 200 potency, and then for a single target fight, it's the same thing as AoE.
If it's a single target fight, he's insane, because every time you throw a skill out that procs a follow-up, it's the follow-up is 230 potency.
Yeah, it's 230. There's an upgrade node.
That's literally an unboosted nuke.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean nuke as in, you know, 2024.
It literally will hit cap, like,
Yeah,
for every single unit, basically.
Yeah, even if, like, you know, let's say your target is only weak to fire and ice, and then not weak to lightning, right? And then you still use the elemental barrage and then proc all three. The lightning hit will still hit for a substantial amount of damage, just because of how high the potency is.
Yeah, and the fact that you're triggering an additional follow-up as well.
Right. I suppose we should explain shock, to be honest.
Shock is just a status ailment that you can inflict on the enemy that makes every single lightning hit on the enemy break twice as many shields. So let's say you have a 5-hit move, that would break 10 shields instead of 5.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. It's like burning on crack. It's like combustion on crack.
Are the other two the same, or are they all three different?
They're all three different.
Yeah, frostbite decreases the enemy shield after they act. So if they, you know, act like 4 times in a turn, they will get 4 shields decreased.
Yeah, it's pretty shitty, especially since enemy AI patterns can often be random. Frostbite is just kind of feels very gimmicky compared to the other two.
The pattern might be random, but you know how many times they will act, so that's fine. You know, in terms of potency, it's obviously not going to be, you know, as impressive as shock. Not nearly.
Oh, right, yeah. Of course, you do see how many actions they're going to have at the beginning of every turn. You don't have to anticipate that.
And then, so what does burning do?
Oh, burning takes off 1 turn, but...
Okay, so burning is just our current combustion, then?
Yeah, it's just EN combustion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Oswald tier 2 is reasonable, right?
Do you think he's, like, significantly,
but
like, on one side or the other?
The thing is, I would say he's probably better than, like, just judge the unit, how powerful he is. He's probably a cut above all the other tier 2 units that we put there, quite reasonably as well.
He doesn't justify himself in the same obvious way that Hujheb and Casti do.
So, like, I would say as a unit overall, he's more valuable than Ochette even. But Ochette also comes with a pet, which is why we put her there. Like, personally, in my mind, for when he comes out, he's probably like either top of tier 2 or like kind of bottomish of tier 1, right?
Yeah, I'm more inclined to say at the moment probably top tier 2.
Yeah, because again, like, we have so many very strong physical typings, like axe, even sword is still quite strong, even though it's not that strong anymore. Bow, right? Dagger, and a lot of these also pierce.
All right, yeah, pretty happy with this. Straight into Nivy then.
Think
Sure.
tier 2. No.
I think he's either tier 2 or maybe. It just depends on. So I think
I've seen
So
quite
here's
a
the thing, right?
few fun Nivy clears.
Well, Nibby is like the introduction to electroshock, right? He's the first character that comes that has this.
Yeah, it's only usable in lightning.
He's only
I think.
usable in lightning, and lightning without him probably be fine without him versus lightning once you have Oswald.
The thing is, you can only inflict shock with Osvald once it's turn 4, because it's only unlockable via his latent power.
Yeah, concentrate spells is what gives his debuffs.
Oh, right, yeah, I remember now. I guess that is a big difference. You would almost definitely want Nivelle in your comp then.
Yeah, because if you're
Um,
breaking, you certainly want to do it in the early turns, don't you?
yeah. Okay. Yeah. How strong is lightning though? So you have in a lightning comp, you'd have like Oswald, Nivelle,
Well, before all
maybe
the later ones come out.
Cyrus, Isla.
Well, you should note that if it's like X pierces lightning, it doesn't proc the ×2 shield shave.
Okay, so EX Loomis dead in the water feels bad, man.
Still dead.
The fact that they made her a Rondo without giving her Rondo's battery is fucking crazy to me.
Like,
Yeah.
just find a way to find the BP. Not my problem.
I mean, well, now there's more options for that, but
Yeah.
all right. So Nivy, Sacred Blaze makes an element type when he comes out, but gets kind of power crept after that.
I'm having a hard time like thinking that he's in the same tier as Oswald, but at the same time, if he's like the bottom of tier 2, I
I
guess it's not
think
so bad. He's also on
there's
a
a
Sacred
big.
Blaze though. I would say
Yeah, exactly.
like
Sacred Blade.
personally I would skip him and then I would just pull on Hujheb's banner and then hopefully you can either spook or if you really want him you can spark him. Right? You can even also pick him up on like a random selector pickup banner.
Yeah.
I don't think yeah, I would say just put him in maybe, right?
I would put maybe, because Sacred Blaze banners are cringe.
True.
Yeah, also his U10 isn't even very useful, and he's not your main DPS, so you only need one copy of him,
No.
luckily.
He's really
Yeah.
more of a shock bot than anything.
Yeah, he's just a shock bot. So I
He's
mean,
a
I
shock
think he's,
bot, but shock is very good.
yeah, I think he's great. Just get one copy of him somehow, and you definitely don't need it on banner, so just put him in
Yeah.
maybe, and we'll move on.
All right, well, back from where we were. Kilns.
Oh.
I love Kilns. I think he's
Yeah.
All
such
right,
a cool kid.
top of tier 1. All right, next character. All right, let's talk about Kilns a little bit then.
So I would say, like, in terms of, so he came out before Hujheb was a thing, and that means that he was able to get sort of a test run as a character without, without any
Always
like,
being cracked.
yeah, bows being cracked. So the idea is, how good is he as a utility character, right? Because he got to show, show his thing, and it turns out he's really good at it because he compresses so many things. In fact, as a character in terms of role compression, he's among the highest, right? He's really up there. He's up there in terms of role compression with tier 1 units. So he compresses BP regen for front row, massive shield shaving, and all
Fizz magic
Fizz
and crit.
oh, Fizz magic and crit, while also being a taunt tank for free due to his passive. And
Yeah,
he
he just
even has
exists and taunts.
yeah, and his TP passive also makes him a stronger tank because it restores damage taken as he's getting hit. So especially for fights where it's not just like one hit or like 2 giga hits, it's like a bunch of multi hits. He's just like constantly recovering HP as he's being hit.
Yeah, it's 20% even. So it
Yeah.
basically, on top of all the possible other multipliers, he just cuts it by 20% if it's
You can think of it as like a 20% damage reduction. So that's essentially compressing 4 different things into one character. The reason why I would say like the difference between his role compression and that of like the tier 1 character role compressions is that it's a little bit harder to justify him if there's no bow weakness. So essentially you want there to be a bow weakness to satisfy him being a 4 role compression, which is huge. And that's why I love him as a character because he brings so much in that one slot.
Yeah, I think even if it's just, I think if it's lightning weakness, then it's still okay, because the debuff you want to be spamming also happens to pierce lightning.
Yeah, but that's not as many hits, I guess. It's
Yeah,
okay.
it's just 3 hits. It's not great,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
it's a fight where you really need a top tank in front most
Yeah.
of the time,
And he's still good.
then he's still good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously,
especially he also has a 4x AoE bow that
mm,
also pierces lightning. So even in an AoE fight, he's quite good at shredding.
but like if it's a bow week, then you can. I don't see. I can't really see a comp where you don't bring him if you have him.
Yeah, if you have him.
Like
Like we said, like bow, you can make bow do a lot of damage without kilns, but
yeah,
kilns just does so much for you in that one slot that I think if you care about bows, you like bows, then he's a great unit to pull. And
yeah,
even if without bows being a thing, just as a utility unit, he's good whenever there's a bow weakness for sure.
mhm.
Yeah. And let's just be a little bit more specific with his shield treading. So he has an EX skill that can be used 3 times per battle. There is no initial turn restriction. It's just when he's above 50% HP, which means that if you have regen up, as long as he's faster than the enemy, he will have greater than 50% HP. So you don't have to worry about
It
that.
doesn't even matter what his speed is because that skill is prior. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember now. It is prio. Yeah. So it's prio, and it's also single target. It's not random target, so you can use it in an AOE fight to target, let's say, the boss, which has the most shields. The only real restriction on it is that the target has to have more than 5 shields, which is also not a real restriction, because by the time the target has less than 5 shields, you're already setting up the turn before break to then break them with Ochette. So
Yeah.
it's
Okay, so in the world where, he comes out around the time he's supposed to, you probably grab an Ochette if you're, being a Hujheb future lover. Does Ochette and Kilns and the current Hunter roster make a bow team? Or would you kind of be grabbing him for the future?
you're grabbing him and he's still going to be useful for basically you can use him in every single fight that has a bow weakness and like Grape said sometimes also with a lightning weakness because he can pierce. And then once Hujeb is here, then you have a bow DPS roster and you would also bring him in pretty much every bow DPS fight.
He deserves tier 1, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say he's either top of tier 2 or bottom of tier 1. Oh, keep in mind he also has the Richard passive. Just it's more restrictive than Richard's in the sense that he needs to be in the front row, but he also doesn't need to be at full HP. So because he's your tank, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully he didn't he didn't slap that on you.
That'd be a really funny passive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'm fine with tier 1 too, as long as, it's with note that if you're pulling for Ochette and Kilns, you're also going for Hujheb. And that is kind of like
yeah,
a package deal.
I would say so. Yes, because he is better if you can actually build a bow team.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I mean just name me a character that compresses like 4 very impressive things into one unit slot. That's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say like he gets more general use than Oswald. So if you want to make that comparison, if Oswald's top of tier 2, I think Kilns has a little bit more overall value, right?
Yeah, it's popular in tier 1. So Morffins, he's not really impressive in potency. Well, his whole gimmick is that he gives a special status effect which gives potency up. I think it's 30%. Yeah, 30% potency up, but it comes with a side effect of 30% SP cost up. And then you look at Casti, and she just gives that potency up without the side effect. So, like, what's the point? Then the rest of his kit is basically ice damage based. So first of all, there's your versatility gone because he's not particularly impressive as a buffer, and then his only other function is to run in ice teams. He gets a 6-hit STIs at 6-star with the condition that you have to apply his special status somehow. I mean, it's just a lot of work for not really impressive results.
Yeah. I would say like he does I think after a 6-star he does like he can or does fit into ice comps. Maybe sometimes
Well,
you use him over
you wouldn't
Ogen.
pull for him. That's
Yeah, well, I mean,
main
also
point.
the other thing is that Ogen's 6-star is not even out yet, so maybe you wouldn't be able to fit both of them in, and then you end up bringing Ogen because his 6-star ends up being better. Either way, like before he got a 6-star, he was not good. After he got a 6-star, he's just
Usable.
good in ice. That's it. So that's not great.
And then he's gen pool, so you can spook him. So skip.
Yeah, easy
All right.
skip.
All right. A character that's already been announced for EN, Ogen.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Um,
I also like Ogen in the same token as Kilns, but
hmm,
the difference is that I think I would say Ogen compresses a little bit less, but he also brings the unique front row BP regen thing that not a lot of units have. He's able
hmm.
to shred ice AoE, but without piercing, 6-hit AoE, I believe. And then he also has an ult buff, right? So there are a lot of similarities, but the difference is he doesn't also double as a tank. He doesn't shred as many shield single target, which is generally more useful than an AoE that doesn't pierce, right?
Does his BP
And
regen stack with other BP regen?
In duration,
yeah,
active wise, yes.
the way the BP regen stacks work, we should talk about this because I think it's pretty useful. We referred to it in the previous episode as well, is that there's active BP regen, right? There is passive BP regen that you can get from unit passes and accessories. Those are one stack. And then those are two different stacks, sorry. And then there's also channeling. Channeling is like a grant BP. It's not a BP regen. So that's also its own stack.
Yeah, that's the only sources around AEX at the moment.
Yeah. And I believe that alt BP regen would be a different stack, as would
Correct. Yes.
and then
Test.
and then obviously any grant BP is just its own thing. You're just granting BP,
It's
you're
a
just adding
heal,
BP.
so
Yeah, it's a
so
heal. The reason why we make the differentiation between channeling is that it looks like a regen, right? Because it's happening every turn. But in fact, you can think of channeling as granting a BP per turn.
what the difference is, you can stack the both of them and get 2
Yeah.
BP.
I
Then
think
if you give
the big thing
any,
is that yeah, if you have all three, you can get 3 BP every single turn.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's say for example you're using a character like Sazantos, right? So
yeah,
Sazantos, every time he uses a move at max BP, he will gain back 3 BP on his own. So he needs help for 2 BP, and that can come in the form of like for example Alon EX, a grant 1 BP plus Signa, for example, or a BP regen A4 accessory plus Signa, right? So you just need two different sources from two different stacks in order to get him back to 5 BP. I don't think you would end up bringing him unless he also hits ice. Right? If he hits ice, then I think that's a great slot in your team because he's doing
yeah.
all
But
these other
then,
things as well. And I don't, of course, I don't mean like literally you're bringing an ice comp. I just mean there's an ice weakness. That's all there needs to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if it obviously you don't need to focus on ice, so it's like the kiln situation again with
Yeah.
the break. But with
But
him
he's Gen
being
pool. Yeah.
standard again, I would
Standard
say,
paid banner, probably.
Yeah.
ouch. What's that? Oh, well.
Well, I mean, the step up's gonna be paid. That's what Dreams means.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Some
Yeah.
some EN characters release with a free step up, and he is
Cope.
not one of
Yeah,
them.
okay.
Cope. No more.
Ouch.
Yeah, I would say he's definitely a little bit more niche than Kilns.
So
Well,
considering his
So
status, do you think he breaks
I,
out of maybe?
I think he's more valuable than a lot of characters, but at the same time, he's gem pool. And also, I don't think there's an argument that you can make that he's more valuable than a character like Neha, with them both being in gem pool. So I think maybe fits well with our prior decisions, right?
Okay. Free to player would like a word with you. All right.
I think it does look slightly weird that we have two tiers separating Kilns and Ogen, but I think it makes sense. It makes sense
Well,
if
I
you
mean,
like
it's
think
a
about it
pool
more
priority
specifically.
list. It's not a
Yeah,
unit strength list. So
yeah, it's not a unit strengthless. Yeah, exactly.
Sertet, the next skippable one.
Yeah, she's just trash. She's like along the same level of trash as Milgar. Not Greed. Sorry, I had a dyslexic moment.
Mm.
Yeah, they're just like very bland units that don't do shit. So
Yeah, she's the first corrosion unit, but corrosion is not impressive. So therefore, and the rest of her kit isn't impressive either.
Is corrosion any
You
different
know,
from combust?
no, it's just fist
it's like
combust.
it's fist combust.
Okay. Do they stack or trigger each other's passives? Like if you have
Uh,
if you have
no,
a
no, no, no.
line dominant on there being combust, corrosion won't also prompt that.
No,
No,
they're
it
different
won't.
effects. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
It's a different effect, but at the
but they
same
are
time,
different
you can have
effects.
both and then
Yeah,
remove 2 shields at
two.
the end of the
Yeah,
turn. but that's not really, you're not pulling a unit because of that.
Yeah.
I think
Then-
the gimmick part of her kit is that she's able to inflict Fizz Res down, which is, I mean, by the time that she comes out, still like relatively unique. It's not a very common debuff, but why are you bringing her into your roster for this? She just doesn't do anything. She doesn't do much.
Yeah, and it's not like she can, like, I mean, ultimately you just want damage because you bring rest down, but then bow rest down exists, so why bother? And it's
Yeah,
not
I know.
like she's viable enough in non-bow comps, obviously.
Exactly.
So therefore, I don't want to waste more time on her. Just skip it.
Yeah, skip.
All right, fair. All right, Ricky.
Oh,
Yeah,
damn.
it's time for you to talk about Ricky.
Ricky, I don't even remember his kit. It was like so shit. Erased it from
God damn.
memory.
All right.
You look at the kit and you go, really? 2024 releasing this? Why? What's the point? Like, you just wasted character art and all that. So you can do some spear breaking. So up to 7 random target hits. Depending on how many BP you spend, up to 3 BP.
Yeah, so his kit design revolves around BP usage. Almost all the other effects, both from his passive, his 3-star passive and his TP passive, as well as a lot of his skills, are dependent upon using BP. And of course, he's quite good at being BP rich. He's not really doing too much with those things. It's like it's not like anything super unique.
Yeah, like the passive abilities he gives. So by spending, or rather by having a certain number of BP, he gives effects like 5% passive Fizz and Ellie defense, 5% Fizz and Ellie attack, 30 effectiveness HP regen, 15 effectiveness SP regen. And I'm not even going to talk about the conditionality, but
This is stupid
just let's say it was free and it just exists. It's not even good at that point.
And then just because, first of all, it's not even good, and then this not even good part is like not even useful because then his other passive is based on how many BP he used on the same turn, and then
it still remains in effect.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, it's based on start of the turn, but I guess it doesn't get removed, right? When he uses his.
No,
BP?
it doesn't. Yeah.
So, but they're not very good. And then when you use BP, you get like some shit passives. You get like can land critical hits with magic. So why are you bringing Rique to your magic comp? I don't understand. And then 2 BP he gets.
Can break wind. Okay, that's a thing. But,
and and then 2 BP you get 10% attack magic up. You're not even gonna give him 15%.
Well, I mean, combined with his first passive, it's now 15. Congratulations. I mean, cool.
Okay, I mean
2021.
Yeah, and then 3 BP you get 20k cap up. Okay, all right. Other characters just get that for free. So like, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know why they released this in 2024. Like,
he reminds me a lot of the very early merchants, where you just kind of look at the kit and you're like, I see what they were going for. They didn't land it, but I see what they were going for.
Yeah, like he's like a lab rat, but he's like really shit lab rat that they forget to feed or something.
Yeah, and then he doesn't even have a really strong attack. His 6-hit spear, was it 7 hits? Sorry, 7-hit spear is only 70 potency per hit at max boost. So it's not even very strong.
No,
that's a 490 potency.
I think that's enough of shitting on the character. I think we can just move on.
I put him a little bit higher in Skip, just because he's a cat. I think that's...
No, he should be in the bottom of Skip. He's just like the worst.
All right, even higher. All right.
Skip.
Oh yeah, he's first to Skip. You know what I mean? That's how.
No, that's
like
not how it works.
If Signa's first to pull, Rick is first to Skip.
Oh, come on.
And that will conclude episode 6 of the Octopod. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you in episode 7, where we finally finish the updated pull priority tier list. God help me. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a lot. until next time, stay safe, stay cute. I have been Dreamt. My co-hosts have been Prim is my ex and Grape. Thank you so much for listening. Boo, a yeah.